Anna is 33 years old, well educated, and has a nice job. She only needs one thing to be happy: love. But, to many people's surprise, she has never had sex. For years, I blamed myself for being a virgin. In a way, I still blame myself for it today. When my birthday comes, I still wonder, what's wrong with me? Writes the 33-year-old in a letter. Anna was raised by women. My mother and grandmother put it in my head since I was a child that sex was a problem, recalls the 33-year-old's adolescence. Religion also had a significant influence on her. From 10 to 19, she attended the Oasis of God's Children. There she was taught that chastity is a virtue worth preserving for her husband. I was a victim of bullying at school. I think that's why I have low self-esteem, she explains in her adult life. I have a tendency to platonic relationships. I always choose guys who are beyond my reach, our reader M.in. For this reason, she attended therapy. Anna hopes to meet the one at last. How will she react when she finds out she's a virgin? I hope he will approach it with respect and not a surprise, the 33-year-old reveals. We are in the 21st century, and there are still specific topics that do not impress anyone abroad but cause shock or at least surprise in Poland. So it is with virginity. Many think a 33-year-old woman who has never had sex is abnormal, strange, or inferior. For years, I blamed myself for being a virgin. In a way, I still blame myself for that. When my birthday comes around, I wonder, what's wrong with me? I'll start with my childhood. I was raised by women. My father disappeared from my life very quickly. My mother and grandmother put it in my head since I was a child that sex was a problem. I understand them. We lived in a neighborhood where many teenage girls got pregnant early. Once, a friend who became a mother very early visited me. She joked that I should get pregnant too quickly, then we could walk together with prams. Mom kicked her out of the house. She didn't want me to share that girl's fate. In this way, consciously or not, the most influential women in my life have discouraged me from the topic of sexuality. Religion has also had a significant influence on me. From 10 to 19, I attended the Oasis of God's Children. I was taught that chastity is a virtue worth preserving for a husband. Violence at school, which I experienced in middle school, also had its effect. I have been a victim of harassment. My peers told me that I was uglier, dumber, and worse. I think that's why I have low self-esteem. That's why I ended up in therapy in college. I haven't thought about sex for a long time. I was even afraid to go to the gynecologist. I went once as a teenager. The doctor who examined me was so rude that I still got goosebumps when I remember my first visit to the gynecological chair. I revisited the gynecologist's office at the age of 27. When the doctor asked me about sexual intercourse, I burst into tears. Fortunately, I found an empathetic doctor. The gynecologist comforted me that I missed many STDs thanks to this. Nevertheless, the lack of sex in my life was still painful for me, mainly by people's critical reactions. During lectures, I listened to my friends who talked about their sex lives without shame. I was blushing. Once a colleague insulted our professor. He said that she is mean because no one has fucked her in a long time. I blushed. I think everyone guessed then that I was a virgin. It's not like I'm asexual. I like a lot of guys, but I tend to be platonic. I always pick guys who are out of my reach. This is how I delude myself into thinking I can control the situation. Once I fell in love, it took at least a year or two. If I caught someone's eye, I didn't see it. I ended up in the chair of a psychotherapist. For a long time, the expert disassembled my childhood and youth into prime factors. We even worked hard to get me to say the word sex out loud without being ashamed. Finally, at the age of 30, I finished therapy. I am a stronger woman, but I still have much to work through, just like our society. Abroad, they don't say loss of virginity but sexual debut. The terminology we use in our country says a lot about our approach to this topic. I'm 33, well educated, have a nice job, and don't have sex. This comes as a surprise to many people. Everything, who I am, comes down to my vagina. Because of this, I thought for a long time that I was inferior, somehow deficient, and even mentally ill. Every day, in rebuilding my self-esteem, I am helped by a friend who professionally pulls people out of toxic relationships. Sometimes he jokes, "Anna, it's nothing. Just a guy puts your dick in and then pulls it out." Great stuff. I am an example of a man burdened with a considerable stigma. Because virginity is such a social construct that puts pressure on girls. If a woman has fleeting sex, no one judges her as abnormal because it is socially acceptable. On the other hand, if a 30-year-old isn't having sex, people look at her like she's a freak. I'm waiting for fate to smile at me and meet the one. I'll tell him the truth right now. I hope he will approach it with respect and not a surprise. After all, he should feel special if I make my sexual debut with him, right?